what we're trying to look at is who we are. And we've been looking at the prodigal son because the prodigal son is a story of humanity or mankind. Not only mankind, of course, but mankind is part of the equation, but it's a story of the absolute Father and the only begotten Son and the Holy Spirit and the creative power that came forth from them to bring forth spirit or spirits in the same manner, which are sons of the Most High, sons of Yahweh, we can call it. And from this, we had the only begotten Son, which is what our scripture shows us that all creation pretty much has come forth from. So all of these spirits are in the Son. They are all creations of the Son, and the Son is a part of Yahweh, if you will. And so the only begotten Son has brought forth there's nothing that is in creation that is not of Yahweh and has not come from the only begotten Son. And so in that, spirits are created having the same power that's within the Creator. And they themselves having the very same power as a creator, they could actually do the very same thing. This is actually what came forth. Last week we went into some areas of talking about the creation that was taking place in the heavens, or that which was over the earth, or even in this solar system or galaxy. And it says the stars of heaven, during the creation when certain things was happening, they were jumping for joy. And this wasn't because they were watching the display of a being doing things, and they were watching and just hurrahing. No, they were very ecstatic or very pleased with the job that they were bringing forth, because they are co-creators. That's what they are, co-creators. The Creator has many arms, and these are all arms. You are a tentacle of that arm, and I am. And we could do things. Now in this earth, in this three-dimensional world that we have here, it's kind of like a prison, because we are subject to certain pain and we're subject to certain ignorance that's here until we wake up to finally figure out what the serpent has actually done, because the serpent is very subtle, and the serpent is able to take your thought process and my thought process, cause us to bend it in a negative manner, and cause us to imprison ourselves and rule over you and I through the things they allow to be in front of us. And based upon that, we cultivate or create exactly what they are wanting us to create. When we're fearful, we create a world in that manner. When they create a world, they program you in that world. So today, the world that has been created is everyone not realizing their power. They're chasing after the power that's outside of them, usually money or things. That's what we're wanting, and we don't see this, so we don't try to cultivate that which is in us. Now that's part of the fall, and the fall is when we fall, we come under the subjection of those who caused us to listen to them, and therefore we become a servant to that, and that's where we are today. Well, as you're waking up, you see, you know, Yahweh allows us to see what has actually taken place, so we could take our strength back. This is what we have going on right now. So we looked in the prodigal son, and we saw that the prodigal son was part of a family, and the prodigal son had the same inheritance as the rest of the family. But that prodigal son wanted to do something with whatever inheritance that he had coming to him. So the prodigal son went out, and if you notice, the prodigal son, we were reading this, it went to a far country. And we usually look at this as, you're in the United States, you go away to India. Well, there are other things that's considered far country, especially if you are looking at things from a spiritual standpoint. You have dimensions and densities. When you live in one to another, it's also a far country. One galaxy to another galaxy is a far country. One solar system to another solar system. But we don't usually think like that because we're programmed to think in this three-dimensional reality, and we have to crack that egg and stick our head out, or like a seed, crack that part and actually come out to see what we need to do. So here we are in the prodigal son. We see that the prodigal son went to a far country and pretty much lost or spent the inheritance. So the inheritance had no power anymore. The inheritance, there was no power. He couldn't use what he had, and having no power or influence in that land, it became, or the prodigal son became like one of the land, even subject to those of the land. Until the scripture tells us he came to his senses. Now the prodigal son started returning to his father. And we went over this two weeks in a row, 3 weeks in a row, so we don't have to go into that part. But I would like us to go to Yael, because I would like to show us an example of going to a far country. That we could look at, that is not necessarily from one nation to another nation. But as you're reading it could sound like, it's a mighty army in the earth that's going forth and doing all these things. Now, what I would like to read for us here is Yael, or Joel, chapter 2. Okay? And in verse 1, notice it says, "Blow the trumpet, sound the alarm on my holy mountain." It says, "Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble. For the day of Yahweh comes, for it is near at hand." Now this is talking about a time period that's coming. Now if we go to verse 2, it says, it's telling you the kind of day it is. A day of darkness, that's the hearts of men, what it's going to be like. Okay, and the activities that's going on in the earth. But not only that, physically too. And of gloominess, a day of clouds, and of thick darkness. Thick darkness is a symbol of deep evil. Like the morning clouds spread upon the mountain. Notice what it says here. A great people. A strong. There has not ever been the likes, nor will there be any more after it to the years of many generations. Not that it's not going to be like that forever. It's not going to be like that for many generations. Well, when we read this, we may think, man, this must be talking about the United Nations coming together, or the United States, or whatever the case is. Well, think of that, and we can say that. But let's think of it as a people who is not of our planetary sphere, and leaving from one area and moving through to other areas. In other words, like the prodigal son going to a far country. Now, this is just an example that I want to bring forth to your minds. Just an example. Okay, so we have it physically and spiritually. This is a physical one. But spiritually, we could move through densities and dimensions. That's moving through and going to other places. So he goes on here now. It says, "A fire devours in front of them, and behind them a flame burns." Now, when I first read this, I thought this was a bomb or something like that, because that's what I was led to believe. There was a bomb. A fire is so you have a fire devours in front of them. Could be a warhead, and flames, whatever is projecting them. Okay, it says the land is like a garden of Eden in front of them, but behind them a desolate wilderness. Of course, when the bomb hits, this is usually what happens. Okay, yes, and nothing will escape them, just like a bomb. But we could think that there's something more, and as we read on, we are forced to consider more. It says their appearance is like the appearance of horses. So it's not horses, but it's like the appearance of horses. And as horsemen, so they run. So that means they're just coming. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains, they will leap. Like the noise of a flame of fire that devours the stubble, like a strong people set in battle formation. So this obviously sounds like a great people that is ready to war. It says before them the people are in anguish. And usually when people are, when you're going to be invaded in a strong army, Hitler, whatever the case is, this is what happens. All faces become pale. They run like mighty men. So they run like mighty men, but they're not necessarily mighty men. But they run like them. They will climb the walls like warriors. So they're like warriors, but keep in mind that it could be something that's like warriors and like men, but not necessarily that. They will each march on their course, and they will not break their ranks. It sounds like something that would be in an army or military ranks. But today, folks break rank, but these will not. They will not push another. Each one marches straight ahead. They plunge through defenses, and their ranks do not falter. This sounds like an army that you would have. But you know something? Back in the days that Yael is speaking here, that's how armies also acted. They had the same kind of setup. There were ranks. So what kind of people is this that you don't have this, the same kind of things going on as in the days of old? It's something that we have not seen. This is what is going to be. Now, we have stronger armies today than we had back then. But why is he talking concerning the ranks? It's not always been that way. It's always been that way. The generals of Egypt did this. The generals of Assyria, they had theirs. They had the king coming down. And folks always broke rank, though. This one always stood against that one. They spoke certain things and created mutiny. This happens even in today's army. You have that. That's why they kick folks out, because some folks are having this army, this struggle, because they wake up, they turn against certain things, they don't want to do it. So this happens in our military today, but it's not happening with these. It says they run to and fro in the city. They will break down the walls. They will climb into the houses. They enter at the window like a thief. So here comes like a thief. Notice now, the earth will quake before them. The heavens will tremble. This is talking about something here. The stars and the moon will be dark, and the stars will withdraw their shining. Now this sounds like some kind of a nuclear deal that may be going on. Now it says here in verse 11, and Yahweh will utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, and he is strong who execute his word. For the day of Yahweh is great, very terrible. Who can endure that particular day? Now, so it goes on. It's going to tell you how to save yourself in this day. Now it says, even now, says Yahweh, turn to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping, and with mourning. So tear your heart and not your garment, and turn to Yahweh your Father. So he's telling you, don't do the symbolic thing, do the real thing. And because he's compassionate, he's merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness, and he relents from sending calamity. Now this looks like the United States being so powerful and everything like that. But what I want you guys to consider also with what is for humanity is think that there are others who may come into this planet that are not from this planet, but has also come from a far place. And when they come, okay, at a certain time, okay, we're not going to see this thing for many generations again. They may come and they go, and then it'll be a very, very long time before that thing comes again. Think of it in that manner, because this is saying this. It said they won't be this until many, many generations to come again. That means it's going to come, and there's going to be some rebuilding after it, because it's going to create some devastation somehow. And then after many, many generations that you may have forgotten them, you're going to, it's not going to be written in your history, because things are going to happen and folks are going to put it in prehistory and probably don't want you to know about it. And then it comes again at some point. But just consider that, because I don't want to tell nobody that it's something. I want you to consider that going someplace else to a far nation or far country or whatever doesn't have to be you and I leaving from here, going to another nation, or another nation, or leaving another nation, coming here. But when we understand and we break through this egg, like a hatching chick, we're going to know that there is more than just what's in that egg. There are things happening, entities and humanoids, or even humans, coming to us from far distant places. We have it in the spiritual matter too, that you're in a particular dimension, but you didn't necessarily originate in this dimension. Just consider that you might have came to this dimension and you might have gotten stuck for a while at least. So we want to keep that in mind as just one of those things that could possibly be when we are thinking about the prodigal son also. Not that the prodigal son did this, but just to get our minds to not think of it in a purely earthly sense. That's the only reason that this is up here. Now we also looked in Corinthians. We saw that there are different types of bodies, heavenly bodies and their earthly bodies, and they all have their particular glory. And the glory that they have is actually what the Father determines that they're gonna have. Now what I want us to remember is that those who came forth from the only begotten Son, having the same power, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, replicating that within themselves also, these individuals have the power to create. The fact that you have a body today doesn't mean that the absolute creator had to have created this physical body. Yes, the power of the creator has created this physical body, but there are things that has come into this body. And from the earth, the body comes. But that which is in the body comes from someplace else. Now, all of this is in your Father. What we need to understand here is the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of Yahweh. Everything is in the kingdom of Yahweh. There's kingdoms in heaven, and there are kingdoms in the physical worlds, or the physical earth here. But they're all part of the kingdom of Yahweh, the kingdom of the absolute creator. But with heavenly bodies, you have those that which are heavenly, and those are kingdoms. And you have physical individuals or physical worlds, and amongst them you have kingdoms. And those are also, they have to function in Yahweh, because everything is in Yahweh. So we got to look at it in that manner and know that they're heavenly kingdoms and they're earthly kingdoms, they're water kingdoms, or they're kingdoms all over. And they're different bodies. in these kingdoms, different bodies that are given bodies based upon certain rules that are already there. You can't go by. You can't go beyond certain rules. If you try to break the rules, it is only going to be temporary. So these guys try with their GMO. They try to put oxen gene with human gene and come up and see what that is. It can't go forever because there are boundaries that's within all of the rules. That's you can make something, but it's not going to be forever. Sooner or later, either it won't be able to produce kin or children, offspring that will live. Something will happen, but it will always come back. Now, that's the situation that we have with this physical body. That's the situation that we have with this physical body that we're dealing with right now. Now, we look a little further, and let's go over to 1 Corinthians 15. In 1 Corinthians 15, I was speaking to a friend of mine, I think early this week, and we were talking about this, but we spoke about this last week too. But I want to touch on this here just for a moment. In 1 Corinthians 15, let's look at verse 49. And it says, "And just as we have borne the image of the earthly, so will we also bear the image of the heavenly." And it goes on to say in 50, he says, "Now I say this, brothers, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Yahweh." Well, that's not what it's supposed to say. Because the kingdom of Yahweh has flesh and blood. But in these translations, they think the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Yahweh, they use it interchangeably. But flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom that is a spiritual kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. Because you have to put down the physical body to get to that place and get a heavenly body. A heavenly body that you could do something like Yeshua did. It wasn't just physical, it was more than physical. It was multi-dimensional. And he had the power at that point to allow himself to be seen by those who are in the third dimensional world, and let himself be heard. If he didn't want them to see him, he could let himself be heard. This is all demonstrated in our scriptures. This is all demonstrated in our scriptures. He came to Yochanan in that manner. He came to Shaul. They didn't see him. He came to the apostles and allowed himself to be seen. And then other apostles, he allowed himself to be seen, but he appeared in such a manner that they weren't even quite sure that it was him until he was gone. Then they perceived it, that it was him. This is a body. But that body didn't have flesh and blood. But notice now, guys, that was a body that was redeemed, because that's what our scripture tells us. That was the body that was the first to be redeemed, or that was first to be redeemed from the dead. Not just a body that went into the grave. Now he's talking about much more than that. Yes, he took a body that. Notice what Yahshua said when he was dying, or after he died and came back. He said he put the body down, or maybe he said this before he died and came back. He said he had the power to put it down, and he had the authority to pick it back up. And he said, that command I have from my Father. That is a creative power. And he said the same thing that he did, you're going to do it too. That means the same power will be with you and me in that redemptive stage, which is a multi-dimensional being. You're not going to be subject to the third dimension, because you're going to put down this thing, this prison that we call body, that calls us to be subject only through the third dimensional world. And in order for us to even start to to pull in certain energies, we have to know how to quiet ourselves. Some people have it really easy because their bodies are just, the wind blows and all their hair stand up and they start shaking. Some people have it like that. They are sensitive to subtle energy changes, and they may not even know. There was a movie, I think it's called K-Pax or something like that, many years ago, and there was this lady who her sense of smell was just expanded in some mode, and she would get around people, and what she was smelling around the people were their attitudes. Because you have this. And she was like saying, you stink. She didn't have to have a nice attitude, but this part of her senses was developed in that body. And she was sensing this. Because see, when you start receiving this, your vision is going to be different. Your senses, the physical senses, are going to be different. And you're going to have this gut feeling that is going to be actually real. And this gut feeling is going to actually be something that's going to testify to you and show you time and time again that it is truth. At first you won't know. At first it will come and you'll go against it and you'll find out, I should have went that way. And it'll come again and you might have chose it and it'll turn out right. And it'll come again, and you'll be like, no, I don't really want that. You go over there, and it turned out that you should have done that thing. This is all your Father trying to tell you to pay attention. That's when he says, listen, awake, rouse yourselves. Whatever he's saying, these different things, it's not just to wake up in the morning. No, he's trying to tell you to pay attention to him. And to pay attention to the subtlety of the dragon, or the subtlety of these who have deceived us and have held us captive today. Because the serpent is more subtle than any other beast of the field. So we're looking at this. And so we're seeing that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven, neither does corruption inherit incorruption. But it's telling us that we're going to bear a heavenly body. But really, the way they translated this, the word born and the word bear, it's really telling you about the very same thing. It's not telling you about two different things. You cause yourself to be born into this, and you wear it every day, continually until you die. And when you put it down, or you change and you take on the heavenly body as Yahshua, you will wear that also continually until you're done with that. That heavenly body that he's talking about right here is not necessarily where you're coming from either. Because you're not the physical body. That's what you're living in right now. It's a house. It's a house for something that you're living in every day, or you're wearing it like your clothing right now, and you're wearing your clothes for a day, 24 hours, but with that body, it's not 24 hours, it's longer. You wear it, and you put it down, but it's not who you are. This is why our scripture tells us that you are the temple of Yahweh. And it says, if the Spirit of Yahweh lives in you, then you are sons. Because that Spirit is the conception of what? Of spirit. That Spirit conceives spirit. That Spirit that conceives spirit has the power to bear the image of a physical body. It has the power to do this. And it has the power to bear also or born the image of the heavenly. Yahshua said, I put it down and I pick it back up. I have the authority. He said, this command I have from my Father. We have to understand, if we're going to be like Yeshua, we have to understand what that is actually saying, because it's saying something to us. Now in Romans, let's go over to Romans 8 and verse 19. Okay, Romans 8. Look at verse 19. We went over this last week, but we just want to pick back up before we go a little further to just kind of lay the foundation down again. It says, for the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the revealing of the sons of Yahweh. The creation is waiting for something, for the sons of Yahweh, because the sons of Yahweh had a duty. He had a job. But the sons of Yahweh fell doing that job. Now the creation was what the sons were supposed to help in the first place. It was supposed to move that from the bondage of corruption that the dishonest manager that we looked at last week had it under. Remember? This man heard that his manager was messing up on things, so he said, you can't have that job anymore. Well, what did the manager say? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have friends that will invite me into their homes. Well, you are the temple of Yahweh. You are the home, and you invited someone in that home with that spirit that was already there. So now you have two things battling inside of you. What we are dealing with in this third dimensional world. We have forces fighting, and we find we have dark and light inside of us wrestling. The battle is within, because we, having the power to do certain things, allowed ourselves or humbled ourselves to hear something else and obey that thing, and we became slaves or servants to that thing. That's where we find ourselves. So the creation is waiting for the sons of Yahweh, or to come back to the place that they were to finish that job. In verse 21. Now listen to verse 21. Because the creation itself will also be delivered from the bondage of corruption. Because it was allowed to become subject to the emptiness that the dishonest manager was moving in this earth. It was allowed to become that way. So here we go now, verse 21. So, because the creation, not the sons of Yahweh now, remember, for the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the revealing of the sons of Yahweh. So the creation waits for this to happen. Because the creation that's waiting for the sons of Yahweh itself will also be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty by the children of Yahweh, or the sons of Yahweh. Because the sons of Yahweh has to wait back up first, and they have to do the job that they were doing. Get back to doing it. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in labor of childbirth right up to the present time. And it's not going to do anything until the sons of Yahweh are redeemed. And not only they, but we ourselves. You see, there are two different things here. Not only they, the creation, but we, the sons of Yahweh, who have the first fruits of the Spirit. The first fruits of the Spirit. Yahshua was the first fruit. We are first fruits unto Messiah. Grown inwardly as we wait for the adoption, the redemption of our bodies. Now, this is a redemption. Now, there's a scripture that we know very well. And it tells us that we will be redeemed from among men. Now, think about what that's saying. You're going to be redeemed from among men. Consider what I'm saying here with that scripture that I was gotten reading here in verse 23. The last part that says, we're the first fruits of the Spirit, okay? We're the first fruits of the Spirit, grown inwardly as we wait for the adoption, the redemption of our bodies. Now, we had said this before, you can't redeem something that you never had. You can't redeem your property if you never had the property in the first place. You can't redeem a title unless you had that title in the first place. You can't redeem money unless you had the money in the same place. So there's a body that's going to be redeemed. And you can't redeem that body unless you had it before in the first place. Now in Revelations, and we're not going to go there, we're just going to paraphrase it really. It tells us that this bride of Yahshua, it says they have no guile in them, they're pure white, and it says these were redeemed from among men. Redeemed from among men. Well, that would imply that they weren't men in the first place, but they became men. But if they're going to be redeemed from among men, something took place that caused them to be right there with men. But they're going to be redeemed from. That means they're going to be taken, because the creation is that which is in here, and they're going to be taken from men. And this is a redemption. So whatever they're going to be after they are redeemed was something that they already had before they came into being men. Where are they going? Notice what Yahshua says. He says, I go to prepare a place for you. Now, not everyone. These are the ones that he gives the Spirit to. Because these are the ones who are first fruits unto Messiah. He said, I go to prepare a place for you, so where I am, you will be also. Well, he was redeemed. And he's in a place now. He said, I am there. Where I am, you may be also. But he was redeemed. The first to be redeemed from the dead. And you, or whoever is going to be redeemed from among men, are also going to be redeemed from the dead. Because men are considered in a dead state. That's why we're stuck in this three-dimensional world. But we're going to be redeemed from among men. Redeemed from the dead in the same manner. So where is Yahshua? Yahshua is also multidimensional at this time. We look at what Yahshua did. He said, I'm going to prepare a place, so where I am, you'll be there too. And you're going to be doing the same thing that I do, and even greater, because I go to my Father. Okay? And where I go, I'm preparing a place that you may also be there. But to get there, you're going to have a redeemed body, because you're going to be redeemed from among men. You can't redeem something that you never had. This is all of our scriptures. All over the scriptures, but we have been taught to overlook it. We've been taught to look past it. So we don't know who we are. So those who have us captive could plug in their fangs like little tasers that the police shoot at you and get you stuck and zap your energy. But they're sucking it. And you and I stay in this particular form, not knowing who we are, not coming to our senses so we can return to our Father. This is the game that's being played. And I'm here telling you, don't go for all these physical things that people set up with the law of Moshe, thinking that through these physical things that Moshe put together, that was for a pattern of something to get you into a particular place. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all of what Moshe put together is fulfilled. No, because you still have, if something hasn't been shown, we are all subject to the same thing. And we continue. But to go kill a red heifer, to think that that's going to cleanse you, for you and I to get into a particular place, it's not happening. Because your flesh and blood ain't going to go nowhere. And the ashes of the red heifer was for the flesh. No different was circumcision. It's for the flesh. It's not going anywhere. It was symbolic. It was a sign of something, not the real thing. A holy garment was to remind you of something. But when the Spirit comes, it said it's going to remind you, because that's the real garment. That's what you're truly covered with. Now, we can't go seeking the kingdom of heaven by doing the things that keeps us stuck to the flesh. We have to wake up. There has to be a rouse up and allow the morning star to bring you the light. And there's a reason why the morning star brings the light, You see, Lucifer actually means light bringer. Lucifer, the dishonest manager, held the office of Lucifer, or still does. Light bringer, this is the morning star. It brings the light. Well, it brings the light after dark times. But this light bringer, the dishonest manager, instead of bringing the light, it brought forth darkness. So we were supposed to come with the light now. But we got fed into captivity to those who actually brought the darkness and actually lost a position, but we didn't take the position. We became subject to those who messed up that position in the first place. A third of us. That's what took place. So we're subject to that now. But we have to rouse and we have to wake up and we have to get beyond that, because we are the bright and morning star when we wake up, because we're going to bring that light after this time of darkness. We are the ones. We're going to take over the office of what Lucifer is about. Lightbringer. Now, the way that they set it up is that we will be afraid of Lucifer. Because Lucifer is the devil, is Satan. Well, that's an office, and that which holds that office or sits in that office right now is not playing the role of that office. That's why Yahweh says your job is gone. You have to lose it. I'm going to put somebody else in there to manage it. But it's the same office. You have a president or a pope or a prime minister and he's corrupt, and you vote him out, or the people rebel and kill him and put somebody else in there, the office didn't change. The individual who was in the office changed. Or in this sense, the spirit that was in the office, it changes. And this all is happening. So we got to think about who we are, because we're being redeemed to something. Where Yeshua is at, he says, you will be there too. So you are going to be redeemed from among men to be in this particular state. It tells you that you weren't always men and women. Now let's go over to Genesis. Let's go over to Genesis 2. Let's look at Adam for a minute. Genesis 2. We're going to read verse 7. And Yahweh formed man out of the dust of the ground. Now this says Yahweh, but really, if you really look at it from what it was translated from, you're going to see that it was Elohim. Elohim, gods, sons of Yahweh, stars, they're servants of the stars. But it's all the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit that's doing it. But when we translated this book, not understanding everything, we want to give credit to make sure the credit went to the absolute, so we put Yahweh in there. It's not necessarily wrong, because there's nothing that comes into existence outside of Yahweh. So it's not necessarily wrong. But to understand what's really going on, we have to understand how the Supreme Being, the source of all, how the Supreme Being caused creation to come. And it comes through that which is created that has the power of creation. So this is saying Elohim, gods. Now we get stuck, because we got stuck in the HOI thinking that gods are evil, okay? Or angels are evil, are of the evil side, and Malachim are of the good side, and gods are bad. This is not the case. This is not the case. No different than Lucifer is not necessarily bad, but whoever is doing the job of Lucifer or filling that office, that may be good or bad. No different than my gun is not bad, but if I am evil, it's probably gonna do some bad things. If I'm kind and compassionate and merciful, it's probably not gonna do a bad thing. God's no different. But we get caught in the mind, and we have to understand what Yahshua is talking about when he says, in order to rob this strong man here, to go in his house and to rob him, you first have to bind him. This is not a physical bind. Yes, to go into his house, Yahshua is trying to show you something physically. You have to handcuff this guy, hit him over the head, whatever the case is, and rob his house right in front of him. He's handcuffed, tied to the chair, whatever, and he can't do nothing but cry. But spiritually, it's not like that. Spiritually, you have to control the mind and the will. And once that strong man's mind and will is stuck to something, you could pillage him. This is why captivity, or those who were in captivity, was led captive to that which what Yahshua was saying. Because they were in captivity in their minds. Their minds, what they believed, that's what held them captive. And so they couldn't rise above anything else to know who they were, because they were kept in prison and never considered who they were until that prodigal son came to his senses. He woke up. Same thing with us. Or we're going to be dealing with all the stuff down there, not knowing who we are. Now the creation comes here through that law we're talking about. The perpetual transmutation of the energy. Energy, the Father's energy, the Father's Spirit. Transmutation, being able to change something from what seemed to be one thing to another thing, or what seemed to be another thing. Yahshua did this when he had the bread and the wine. This is what he was doing. He was putting forth a transmutation energy in that. It was looking the very same way, but there was something else that was in there that was going to react in the apostles. Transmutation of energy. He was doing that. There's perpetual transmutation of energy. When you wake up to who you are and accept the Father, it's no different. It was there before that, but now you're just awakening to how your relationship is with it, because now you're aware. So it says Yahweh formed man from the dust of the ground, because whoever is doing this has authority to do it. That command it has from its Father, from the creative force. It has the power to form a body that was not man, but looked like man. From the surrounding, the dust of the ground, the surrounding, in the atmosphere, everything, and projected and actually breathe life in it and animate it. Had that power to do that from another dimension. That's what it had the power to do. And it did it to help those that were in here. The creation that was already subject or stuck or in jail or in captivity. But this right here wasn't in captivity. It wasn't subject to the rules that were naturally in here of death or whatever the case is after this manager had things in a dark place. And it breathed the spirit, the nefesh, the prana, and man became a living being. Notice, man became a living being. Or the man, whatever it was created there, that man became a living being. Let's go to verse 8. Yahweh planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed from the environment that was already in here. Now, I'm not telling anyone to believe this. Consider it. I know what I've been shown, but I know that I can't help someone to get here unless they want to open up to here. So I'm not telling anyone to believe this hook, line, and sinker. Consider it. See if it makes sense. Test the spirit. Ask a question, or ask many questions. Read your scriptures and see if it goes against it. Now let's go to verse 15. Then Yahweh took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and care for it. Do you think no one was there? No, the creation was already there. The creation that man was supposed to assist and deliver from what this honest manager had put there has caused, this is what he was supposed to do. But Yahweh are the Elohim. And this is what the 2/3 and the 1/3 was having. They had this plan together to do this thing. The whole scope of them were gods. Elohim, that's what they were. Plural. They were working together to bring the creation from under the subjection of corruption during this time. Now, there's not just one story in the Adam account of Genesis. I mean, it's talking about many things, but this is one of the things that's going on there. There are those who had taken humanity captive, or man that was the creation that was in here captive, and actually messed up the DNA, causing everyone to become subject to it, or to them, or to that Lucifer that was not a light bringer, but was the bringer of darkness. So this is what we have here. Yahweh took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work and care for it, because you're going to take this office from this other one. Now in there, this other guy didn't lose his job yet, so don't take of that tree right there, because where you have descended to, you won't be able to handle that tree. But it was already there. It has its office in there. The United States has an embassy in Jerusalem. Well, all these other nations said, I'm going to put mine in there too. It's already there. It's already there. Now, let's go over here now and read verse 17. But the tree of the knowledge of righteousness and evil, which is just good and evil, you must not eat, for in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. Not a physical death. Because they weren't physical at this time. Not a physical death. Because they hadn't descended down into physical things yet. They looked like a physical person. They moved around like a physical person. No different than Yeshua. When Yeshua had been resurrected from the dead. At this point, they're not dead. Because Yahweh is saying you will die if you do this. You will die. They're not dead. And when he partook of it, he didn't die physically. He didn't die. Now, we go a little further, and as we go further, we see that Adam did not stay alive. The time came that after Adam lived his life, Adam died his physical death. However, there's another death that Adam died because he was removed from those that he could not now contaminate with whatever he had. So now we had someone who became a living being that wasn't a living being as you walk around in this earth, but had life, to put that life into something in this earth that was created in this earth. And that thing that was created in this earth became a living being, but it wasn't man. It wasn't man as the creation that was already here. And it was supposed to take care of a creation that was already here. And it was not subject to death. Or else it wouldn't have to be told, you're going to die when you do this. Now let's go over to 1 Peter. So, death came after something was done. And it came to Adam and to everyone who was with Adam. To the third that was in this earth. Until the day of judgment. We're kept in chains of darkness. We can't see. We don't know who we are. These are chains. They're not physical chains. They're spiritual chains. Until judgment comes, and judgment is actually taken on the dishonest manager, and then we are set free. We're no longer captives to that. None of us. We're captives to what we were before, which we were willing servants of our Father. Today we're willing servants of ourselves. In 1 Peter, so remember, Adam became a living being. Adam became a living being. 1 Kepha 3, let's look at verse 17. It says, "For it is better to suffer for doing righteousness, if it is Yahweh's will, than for doing evil. For Messiah also suffered once for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to Yahweh." Or you can say, back to Yahweh. "Being dead in the flesh," because that's what happened when things happened to humanity, "but made alive in the Spirit." That command, because he knew who he was and woke up, he received that command, which he already had, but he was cut off from it. But he aligned himself to receive it again. And that command, that power, the authority he had from his Father to be once again, even though the body had an issue, hey, he was alive in spirit, because it's not one-dimensional. He received that heavenly body again, in which he has domain in. That's his domain right now. He lives there. He preached to those spiritually dead also, even as Yahweh to the disobedient, when the patience of Yahweh was waiting in the days of Noah, while an ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8, and that's symbolic, that 8 is symbolic, were carried safely through the water. Safely through the water. That was also symbolic. We won't go into that today. The same figure, baptism, which corresponds to this, corresponds, a representation of this, now saves us, not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to Yahweh for what? For a clear conscience. A clear conscience, guys, that's what the ashes of the red heifer couldn't do. The ashes of the red heifer was supposed to purify the flesh, but it couldn't purify the conscience. So notice now, we need the purification of the conscience, guys. That's why if you stole, let's steal no more, but let's do the right thing. I mean, that's why if you find that your brother has something against you, before your accuser could get you into before the judge, just like with Eob, before that could happen, handle it. Take care of it. Because just in the same manner, a day is going to come, or the day has already come, and will continue to come, that the sons of Yahweh, the gods, come before the one who is set over this jurisdiction, which is Yahweh, also Yahweh, a son having the authority to do certain things in here. And it's going to say, have you considered my servant? Yeah, he got some problems, but yeah, he's doing this and that. Yeah, I see him. But do this, and he's going to be doing that. Or do that over there, he's going to be doing this. The day comes that the accuser is going to say, watch, look over there, and see this, look over there, look how dirty that floor is. His wife told him to clean that a long time ago. He's still, look at it. It's still a problem. Accuser, trying to find a fault that I didn't do the righteous thing. That's his job. That's the job of the accuser. So before the accuser gets to accuse us, we need to handle it, because we're going to find that there are going to be a lot of problems that comes trying to balance that. So whatever we do that is not proper, let's stop doing it, let's undo it, and keep ourselves in a particular place. It's telling us of these things. So notice now in the same verse 21. So this is not to get dirt from the body, but as an appeal to Yahweh for a clear conscience. Notice what it says next, and of the resurrection of Yahshua Messiah, or the redemption of Yahshua Messiah, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of Yahweh. Malachim, authority, and powers have been made subject to him. He has command. Well, when he says, where I am, you will be also, where is he? Where is he? Well, we have to wake up. And he said, you know where I go, you know the way, do these things, and you're going to get there when the day comes. Because there's a day of Yahweh, which is not a day, it's a period. It is a predetermined period of time that the Father knows. And during that time, there's going to be many things happening. A lot of pressures are going to be upon you, but you're going to come through, because the pressure is going to come upon the whole world. Because there's no way for us to be born into what we're going to be born into, bear or born, whatever, or wear it. Because it's going to be as labor of childbirth. It comes upon the whole world. And we have to handle it. We have to handle it mentally, because there is no growth into this without the tribulation. Tribulation brings great stress. You think of a woman in childbirth, and this is stressful. So this is great stress, but notice what it says, guys. It comes upon the whole earth. And the stress comes, and it won't be like this for many generations, our scripture tells us. And there's going to be transmutation of energy, as Shaul says. You're going to be changed from one thing to another. Transmutation of energy, moving you from one thing to another thing. You're totally different, but you could look the very same. The law of correspondence. As above, so below. This is what Yahshua says. Who has gone into heaven, the kingdom of heaven, but he could also function in the kingdom of earth because he's here. But he's functioning in heaven on another dimension because he's multi-dimensional, and you originally were. You still are, but you're stuck in a body that's third dimensional. So you're in this dimension. You can't get out of this dimension. Third dimension, that's where that body is. The body is in this dimension. You, that which lives in this dimension, is not only third dimension. Look at Yahshua here. It says, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of the Father. Malachim, authorities, powers haven't been made subject to him. He had this power in the garden. This is why he had to become that which was a life-giving spirit again. And the life-giving spirit that he had the power to give, which he gives it through what? This is how he creates. He creates through the Malachim, through the authorities that's there, through the powers that's in heaven, the principalities and powers that have been made subject to him as he chooses to create. Which is according to what the Father wants, he creates it. No different than when you have willpower, you choose to create something in this physical world, you go and get that piece of wood, makes a blueprint, and you put stuff together. This is the creative power of the Father being displayed in the third dimensional world. Now think of this other world that you're going to be dealing with now, which is not just third dimensional. That you're awake, and you awake to the fact that they're Malachim, which are your servants, and you're Malach too, but you're Malach to your Father. And these are Malach to you, Malachim to you. And they have Malachim below them, because they're simply messengers and servants, and the Son is a servant as long as he's an heir. So he has this. They have all been made subject to him. What if he didn't know? Or what happens when he didn't know it? Because when he didn't know it, guess what? He died. When he was made alive and he received the Spirit once again, the power of the Father was once again with him. And what the Father has, the inheritance of the Father, is his. Is his. So while he's still a far ways off, his father goes to him and throws himself on his neck. This is what the prodigal son's father did. And brought him back to the home. Brought him back. So we have to think of who we are. If we're going to be redeemed from among men, or that's our hope, where are we being redeemed to? Because think about it, if you're going to be redeemed from among men, you weren't always man. When Adam died, this is when Adam knew his wife. Had no need to do that, but after he died and he was disconnected, here came something, because the plan was that it was already made, guys. The plan was already in order. If this happened, we're going to incarnate through those bodies that was already in the earth. That we came in here to release from this bondage of corruption. That's going to be the way that we do it. And so today, we're in those bodies. That's part of the dissension. We have fallen. This is where we are today. So arise. Wake up. There are things that we have to do. We have to fan that spirit. Let's go to Luke. Luke chapter 3. So we see the genealogy of Yeshua here in Luke chapter 3. In verse 23, it says here, Yahshua himself, when he began his ministry, was about 30 years of age. Now, he started his ministry at the very same time that the Levites were able to start their work at the temple. They didn't start it when they were born or when they were teenagers at a certain time. 30 years of age. Being the son, as was supposed, of Yosef, who was the son of Eli. And it's going on through those things right there. And it's going on, who was the son of Matithiah, who was the son of Levi, and we go all the way to verse 38. Who was the son of Enoch, who was the son of Seth, who was the son of Adam, who was the son of Yahweh. When you bring forth a child into this world, it is you, a part of you, that is coming into this world. Eve came out of Adam. So when Adam and Eve brought forth a child, it was them. It was their creation. So when Adam came into this world through the creation of that which projected him in here also. In this physical world, you and I are humans, man and woman. When they get together, they bring forth themselves in something else. All the genetic structure that's in them goes into that particular child there. And it's a part of them. Now you got to think about it now in another sense. Because you're moving through dimensions to put something in the earth. Because see, when you do it in the earth, it's the same dimension. It's third dimensional creation of third dimensional creation. But if you look at a different dimension, bringing something into the fourth dimension, there's not the physical relationship that's there. It's all mind. It's mental. It's the power that had been already given to you, and you had the power over the authorities, principalities, powers, Malachim, to bring forth a part of whatever you want to look like or whatever. You're bringing that forth. And when you get ready, you put the life in it because that authority you have from your Father. I'm not telling anyone to go this far. I'm not telling anyone to even believe what I'm saying. But that which put Adam together, formed Adam from what was around here, had the power to form Adam. And it had the power to move something into Adam, which was part of itself. Part of itself. Who was the son of Yahweh? Put it within itself, put that spirit there, and it became animated as a living being that you walk around here. But before, it wasn't a living being because that spirit did not go in there to make it a living being. And that spirit would have been housed in that because it wasn't a physical body. It was a spiritual body or a heavenly body. Walking through walls, everything. Because that's what Yahshua got redeemed back to. We will also be redeemed back to that very same thing. That's what our scripture is telling us. From among men, because we fell amongst men. We fell amongst men, and therefore that's why we obviously have to be redeemed from among men. We won't have to do things as we're doing right now, or those who are in that area don't do things as we do it right now. But we can realize that once again. We can realize that once again. Think about it. What I'm saying. Adam, who was the son of Yahweh. But before it became a living being in here, it had the authority. The same authority of Yahweh to give life to something and create that thing and put life into it still. That's what we have from the beginning. Just as the Father has life within himself, so he gave that same spirit, the life-giving spirit, to the only begotten Son, that the only begotten Son has life, the same life-giving spirit within itself, that in the creation, that it projects, it put the life in it too. Coming all the way down to Adam here, because these are all sons, all children. It's the same replication of this transmutation of the one energy that's happening. So Adam was a son in the sense that the creative power of the Father brought Adam together and put the very same life force that's in Adam. So Adam became something on that dimension, a creation in the third dimension, but it was multi-dimensional at the time. I hope you could understand what I've said so far. We're going to close there until we'll go into some more next week.